Well, looky here. Austin got the 383 Camaro back. It was popping through the carburetor, popping gas through the carburetor. Thought it was a timing issue, but we messed with that, and I told him, I said, buddy, you got a valve out of adjustment. Sure enough, he take the valve cover off, and one of the screw-in studs decided to unscrew itself. So, we're going to take them all off, and we're going to torque the studs down, then we're going to redo all the rocker arms.
Every one of them.
And Austin, he's still got the LS1 turbo, I think. What do you got left to do on it?
Exhaust. And put some fittings on like the wires.
And then we can get a dyno on that. But he's he made him a YouTube channel too, if you guys want to check it out. Auto Alliance 606, because that's our area code. We're in the boonies of Kentucky.
Can't you tell the accents?
But yeah, we're going to take this off. We're going to take all the rocker arms off. And I'm going to teach Austin how to set some rockers on a small block Chevy. Them LS's, they're easy. You just torque them down. Small block Chevy, there's a little bit more to it than that. And here's a little video of it popping through the carburetor due to the rocker stud backing out on one of the exhaust valves. Well, we went to the store to get some PTFE thread sealer. You can see the part number. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, I like to use this stuff on any bolt that goes into the coolant passage, like for the head bolts. Like on a small block Chevy, all the head bolts go into a coolant passage, except for the very top ones. Those don't go into a coolant passage. You got your water pump bolts, your head studs, the exhaust, the one that's over the exhaust port, it goes into a coolant passage. And then the one that's over the intake port, if your heads are ported, that one actually goes into the intake port itself. So it's good just to thread seal all of them, because I don't know how ported the heads are on that one. So we're just going to put thread sealer on all of them, on all the head studs. But when we got back from the parts store, it started raining. We looked at the radar, Austin did. And hopefully it'll quit here in a little bit, but it's coming down. Look at Austin, he's a trooper, son. He said, screw that rain, I'm gonna do this. I'm watching from the truck. Nah, I'm gonna get out there in a minute. People ask, they'll say, what's the difference between non-self-aligning and self-aligning rocker arms? The self-aligning rocker arms, they got little grooves, and I'll show you a picture here in a minute of one, that hold the valve stem, which holds the rocker in place. Non-self-aligning, you use with guide plates. Self-aligning, you do not use with guide plates. They guide themselves. Non-self-aligning, they don't have them grooves. They're just flat across here. And the guide plate is what guides the push rod, which guides the rocker. So self-aligning, do not use guide plates. Non-self-aligning, you have to have guide plates. Okay, so that's the difference. And like this one's smooth. This one is a non-self-aligning, so it has to have guide plates to keep the rocker arms straight. The push rod, the guide plates keep the push rod straight, and the push rod in turn goes up in this hole and keeps the rocker arms straight. Self-aligning, you do not use guide plates with self-aligning. They have little grooves on the back here that hug the valve stem that keep the rocker arm straight. And here's a rocker arm that's self-aligning. See these little grooves on the left and right? Those are the grooves that hug the valve stem to keep the rocker arm straight. Alright, so those rocker arms that we were looking at, those are stamped steel, just your basic rocker arm that comes on stock cars usually. Here's some roller tip rockers. Roller rockers, these are full roller, but even the roller tips. On the left you'll see self-aligning used without guide plates. it has those little grooves to hold the valve stem. Then on the right side, it don't have those grooves sticking up on that rear roller, and you use those with guide plates. So self-aligning on the left, non-self-aligning on the right. Non-self-aligning, you have to have guide plates. Self-aligning, you do not use guide plates. And here's the guide plate. See these grooves right here. The stud goes down in the hole where my thumb's at. This one broke actually. But this, you have to use hardened push rods with these too, but the push rod comes up in here, and this groove is what keeps the push rod straight. Now, I like to use the shank style studs, because the shank, let's turn some light on. The shank style stud, I have like a little shank here that'll go in the hole of the guide plate, wherever I did with it, and keep the guide plate straight for you. Whereas these, you got to kind of line the guide plate up as you tighten these up. And you want the guide plate groove dead center of the valve stem when you put that in. Wherever I set it. Where did I set that at? Yeah. Yeah, you want the middle of this lined up with the middle of the valve stem. You want to make sure it's straight. But you know what? These heads almost work as a valve guide because there's really no clearance in there. Those should have been hollered out some. Because that hole's probably smaller than the guide plate itself. But anyway, all these screw-in studs are loose. So we're going to take them out, seal them, and then torque them back down to 50 foot-pounds. Austin made us a little makeshift canopy. All right, we got the studs all torqued down with the guide plates. And again, I don't like how small that hole is for the push rods. And this is why you use hardened push rods, because that push rod's going to be rubbing up against that guide a little bit when it's straightening the rocker arm. And if you don't have hardened push rods, it could wear into it and eventually cause a problem. But now you got a washer on these rocker arms. It goes round part down, and then the nut goes round part up, so the two flat sides go together. There's a flat side on that nut, and then there's a flat side on that washer. Those sides go down, or go together. Those flat sides go together. The washer round side down, nut round side up, just like that. All right, so we just snugged the rocker arms down and got them close. Now, the firing order on a small block Chevy, or the way the 4 strokes go, is intake, compression, power, exhaust, intake, compression, power, exhaust. So now the way that you tell which one of these is the exhaust valve and which one's the intake, that's the exhaust valve. That's the exhaust valve. There's the intake runner. That's the intake valve. There's the intake runner. So on a small block Chevy, it goes exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. Exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. Now we know the exhaust valve is going to open first. So what we're going to do, is the EOIC method. We're going to do the exhaust starts to open. We're going to set the intake. The intake starts to fully close, and we're going to do the exhaust. Now the way you do this is you grab this push rod and you move it up and down, and then you tighten this nut up. Be sure on these stamp steel rockers that your socket's not getting on the rocker. That's an issue with this when you do with stamped steel. But as soon as you lose up and down movement on the push rod, see, he's got to back this one off. Well, after we turn the motor over. But after you lose up and down movement, don't do the spin method, because sometimes the plungers won't be full of oil and it'll compress them and it'll still spin. We don't want that to happen. We want it to stop as soon as it's hitting the plunger and hitting the rocker. We want it to stop right there. So as soon as you get no more up and down movement on the push rod, then you turn the nut a quarter to a half a turn. On my race motors, I just let it hit and I only give it an eighth turn, because for some reason cars run better when they're set loose like that. But on a motor that you're just non-performance motor, you're going to drive around, just as soon as no more up and down movement, a quarter to a half a turn. And that's what we're going to do. So now we're going to turn it over. The exhaust starts to come up. We're going to set the intake. Once we get the intake set, we're going to turn the motor over some more. And when the intake comes all the way up and then goes back, starts to close, then we're going to set the exhaust. Well, we tried to reuse this guide that was broke on the bottom. And that didn't pan out because it finished breaking. We couldn't torque it down and keep it lined up, and he tried to just tighten it with a wrench, and when we tried to adjust the rocker, it broke loose. So, and then it broke even more when we tried to tighten it down.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to buy new valve guides. But again, I don't like how the heads themselves act as valve guides, because look at that. When you put valve guides on that, you're supposed to cut all that out so it's open for the push rod. I don't know.
Heck, maybe we don't even need it.
That's them old Chevrolet smog heads.
No part number.
Yeah, no part number on the guides. So.
Do we even need guide?
I just went over this. You don't need them if you got self-aligning rockers.
But we don't.
But you got non-self-aligning, so yeah, you have to have guides. Actually, you could probably get away with it. Them heads could probably work as the guide, but I don't know if I trust that. Yeah, I don't know if I trust that. But yeah, as tight as those are in the head, you think that would work as a guide. Look at that. They're tight as can be in there. So that's going to do it for this video. He's going to have to order new guides, or he's going to have to get some self-aligning rocker arms and just take the guides off. I think I've got some self-aligning rocker arms off my LT1. I think I still have those, so maybe he'll just take the guides off and we'll use the self-aligning rockers. I don't like the way the hole in the head is where the push rod goes, because that's way too tight for I mean, it's the head's almost acting like a guide plate. I don't like that. Those should have been hollowed out more when you use guide plates, I would think, but I could be wrong on that. But I know on my LT1, the heads, they, you know, that was open more. But either way, he's either going to get some new guide plates for it, or probably just maybe put some self-aligning rockers on there and take the guide plates off. But like and subscribe, and the next video we'll do on this hopefully will just be us actually setting the rocker arms, so y'all can see better how I do that.